Yes, sir.
I don't hear no. Is 2 here yet?
No.
Okay. We said we'd wait until 10:15. Now, what is your pleasure, fellow journalists?
Oh no, not Channel 2.
You have all the qualities of a dog except loyalty. Well, I guess we might as well go. I'll joy. I'll take your leave. We're here this morning to recognize Detroit's latest champion. This city's been renowned since the days of the Golden Gloves and Joe Louis back in the 30s for producing great boxing champions. They come off the streets of Detroit and they rise high in probably the roughest profession of them all, professional boxing. And we have with us today the latest in a long line, Lindell Holmes, who won the International Boxing Federation IBF Super Middleweight title on January 27th, when he won a 12-round decision over Frank Tate. Super middleweight is about 170 pounds. Midway between, was it 168? Is that the weight?
Yeah, between middle and light heavy.
Yeah, between middle and light heavyweight. He is now negotiating for his first title defense, hopefully here in Detroit. His professional record is 41 wins, 5 losses, 35 of those wins by knockout. He's held the U.S. Boxing Association Super Middleweight title since 1986. Holmes turned professional in '79. He participated in the U.S. Olympic trials in '76 and lost to Michael Spinks in those trials. Spinks went on to win a gold medal. I guess you were both middleweights about that time, right?
Both middleweight.
Mm-hmm. And I am presenting him today. It is my honor to be able to present to him formally his title. And it is quite an impressive belt. Or his belt. You gotta be in shape to lift one of these. Well, let me get it straight here. Lindell, champ, it's my pleasure as mayor of this city to present to you this belt, which is symbolic of your championship, and with which you join a long, proud line of Detroit champions. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to say that I'm honored to receive the belt from the mayor, and after 10 hard, long years of working, I finally become a world champion. And I'm just, like the mayor said, just one in a long line of champions. Not the first, and definitely not the last. But I appreciate the opportunity for the mayor to present me with the belt. And I'd also like to present him with a pair of boxing gloves.
Uh-oh.
We're using the gloves off.
I'm gonna present him with these gloves. These aren't the exact ones that I fought in, but these are 7 ounces, so therefore he punched a little bit harder with these.
I need an advantage.
Mr. Holmes, are those for use with the city council or the news?
Oh, for everybody. I mean, you know, I'm the champ of the world, so I'm going to pretend he's going to be the champ. He's the champ of Detroit.
And he's giving me lessons.
You hold the belt up a little bit.
Okay. Okay.
That's super
Super middleweight.
middleweight.
Yeah. When I first started for boxing as a professional, I was a middleweight, and at this point, I'm still fighting in 2 weight classes, middleweight and super middleweight.
So you're the world super middleweight
World
champion.
super middleweight champion. Yes.
The fight that you're negotiating to take place in Detroit, who is it that you'd like to fight with?
Well, to be honest with you, we were negotiating for the Roberto Duran fight for the middleweight title, and we were trying to get something worked out with that, but I'm almost sure that's not going to happen here. But they're talking about Iran Barkley, so if we can get that confirmed and everything, it's a good chance they might put it on here in Detroit.
Would that
Barkley?
Yeah, Iran Barkley.
Iran Barkley?
Yeah,
Never heard of him.
yeah.
Fella knocked out Tommy
be?
Ray.
He knocked-
Iran.
Yeah, the guy that won the middleweight title from Thomas
Barkley?
Hearns, Iran Barkley, and you know, also too, you know, they do a lot of boxing out at Auburn Hills, which is good. But boxing started here in Detroit, and we want to try to bring it back to Detroit if we can.
Is Duran dumping?
Well,
Absolutely. It's an honor.
I'll just say this: I've been the #1 contender for about almost 2 years now, and the mandatory was like almost a year ago, and we have a lawsuit pending right now because he didn't fight. He went and fought Sugar Ray instead. So you know.
But the association still doesn't enforce that.
Well, what happened was after the fight, what the WBC did, they stripped him of his title, and the title was vacant at this point. I'm the #1 contender, and they put him #2 behind me in order to try to still put the fight together. But I'm not for sure if it's going to happen or not. But we're trying to get in position to fight one of the bigger name fighters. Even the Thomas Hearns, he's a good friend of mine. He's from here in Detroit. But if we can put a big fight together, we want to try to get something big, and then if we can do it here to be even a bigger magnitude.
And Lindell trains out the Kronk, so he
Right.
knows Tommy well.
Exactly. I sparred with him for like 4 years in the early part of my career, so I know him pretty well.
Wouldn't Tommy have to come down and wait though?
No, he's the WBO Super Middleweight Champion, so it would just be like unifying the belts. So, I mean, you know,
Are you making that a public challenge here?
well, I'll just say this. I've been working with him for years and years, and if it's time to get it on, we can get it on. You know?
If the money is
And
right.
if the money's there, that's the big test.
But isn't it difficult to get the money right outside of Vegas or Atlantic City?
No, not really. I mean, you know, if you look at the way the fight game is today, you get pay-per-view, and you got the cable visions and stuff, you know, where they can connect it, you know, around the world, you know, today, and they can do it at any site, you know. But what happens is usually the bigger casinos and stuff usually negotiate and are able to put more money up, you know.
Would you fight Hearns when they take off?
It wouldn't make me a difference.
Asking him. I just said absolutely. But you're not a ventriloquist.
I'll just say this here. Like I said, I worked with him off and on close to, 10 years before, 5 years before he turned professional. And I know him like the back of my hand, so it wouldn't be a problem. Wouldn't be a problem at all.
How old
See,
are you, Linda? Are you?
I'm 33 years old. And at the time I started working with Tommy, it was like around 1974, 1975, and he was like, I was a middleweight then, he was a 139 pounder, so he's continued to grow, his body, you know, continued to grow, and I just stayed right here at middleweight.
Tommy was coming up about here today.
Yeah, he's quite a bit taller, but so was he was quite a bit taller than Marvin Hagler too.
What's that mean?
What does that? Well, that means that he has problems with shorter guys. He has problems with shorter people. Yeah.
You think you can get inside out?
Oh, definitely.
You did when you were sparring?
Definitely. I mean, I helped prepare him for the first Sugar Ray Leonard fight and quite a few fights that he had, you know. And like I said, you know, we're still good friends now, but business is business. You know, I mean, at this point, you know, not only did I spar with Thomas Hearns, I mean, you have the WBA champion Mike McCallum. He used to fight here at Kronk. I sparred with him. So I sparred with a lot of the top guys that's out there now that's champions and top contenders right now.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Toledo, Ohio. But I primarily did most of my boxing here in Detroit because we couldn't get the kind of exposure in Toledo that we could in Detroit. And so we made Detroit or at least I made it my second home.
And your championship bout on the 27th was with Frank Tate?
It was Frank Tate. He's a native Detroiter too. See, we even sparred together. I helped prepare him for the Olympics in '84. I had to come back in '90 and win the world title from him. So yeah.
That Texas outfit?
No, Abercrombie. Yeah, he's a part of the HB out of Houston, Texas. After the Olympic Games, he signed with Abercrombie as opposed to coming back to Detroit, which I thought was a bad move.
Why?
Well, because I thought at the time, well, Abercrombie and them, they were just getting started, and you had some well established in Detroit, you know, and it just made a big difference. I think Tate at that time might have thought that he had to wait in line because, you know, Thomas Hearns being the middleweight at that time, and a lot of guys were. With the Clunk thing, they had so much talent that's why a lot of guys left Detroit, because, you know, it was just full of loaded with talent. I mean, just about everybody that you went to the gym and worked out with was a potential world champion, you know. And as time showed, you know, the majority of them became champions, you know. So, you know,
A lot of talent in the city.
yeah.
As Detroit's newest champion, you're also the newest role model. I was wondering what the message you have to young people, those who look up to you.
Well, my message is basically, you know, to stay away from drugs and try to be in the right type of environment, because I think the problem with a lot of kids is that they get caught in the wrong environment with the wrong crowds, and as a result, they become involved with drugs, or whether being from the addiction aspect or from just being out in the streets, you know, trying to sell drugs and that type of thing. But I just say, you know, try to be with people that are not a part of that type of scene.
Do you live in Detroit now?
No, I still commute back and forth. I'm here quite a bit of the time, but I'm just commuting back and forth.
You're aware that the kind of kid that's out in the street rolling isn't the kind of kid that would go into the gym and sweat?
Well, that's a societal problem. I mean, at this time, you know, if you look at it, I mean, I worked 10 years to get where I am, you know, and it wasn't easy. And a lot of guys that could come to me, and I mean, guys that I know even now in Toledo as well as in Detroit say, well, you know, for what you do in maybe 3 or 4 months, I can do it in a couple of weeks.
But that's the point. They don't want to wait 10 years. They don't. Our generation, missed them by pointing out you don't start at the top.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that is a problem. I mean, but like I said, that's a bigger problem. That's a problem that's over my head. All I can do is try to speak from where I'm coming from, because like you said, the people of your generation as well as the people of my generation, I'm a little bit older, I think, than a lot of the younger people, like in the 20s and 18 and 19, they're looking to give it to me right now, and they're not looking at tomorrow. And I think in my generation, or at least a lot of my friends more or less had goals and tried to, you know, set timetables and entertain them at certain times. And I think it's a big difference.
You said it's a bigger problem. Were you pointing your finger at the mayor when you said it?
No, I was pointing my finger at you.
Yeah, you're doing fine.
Why do you think Detroit's such a good training for great fighters?
Well, first of all, it's a good environment because, I mean, if you look at a lot of cities, they don't have as good a recreational program as they have in Detroit. Like in Toledo, okay, like I was born there and I was raised there, but then as I got older, I had to commute to Detroit because they quit funding the recreational facilities in the inner city, and therefore the inner city youth didn't have anything to do. So a lot of them, you know, I mean, and that's a problem not just in Detroit, and it was all over the country because they quit funding programs in the inner city, and as a result, then most of the kids don't have anything to do. They don't have anything. I mean, you have a lot of energy, and they don't have a way to express it, you know. So they go to the streets, and here in Detroit, they have recreational facilities all over the city, and it gives kids an opportunity to go there and train and play basketball or whatever they do, but just to burn energy, period, you know, and to take them away from a lot of that. I mean, you have a certain percentage of kids that, I mean, you know, will probably fall through the cracks and get involved in certain things anyway, but the bigger amount go to the gyms and go to the recreational facilities and have, you know, other things to think about and try to focus on as opposed to drugs in the streets.
Did the mayor rehearse you on that?
No.
It's very obvious this young man has a young mind, not subject to influence by the media. Right off, brother.
Chad, you touched on another interesting point. I'm the same age as you from what you said.
Yeah.
Do you find that young people today do not allow athletics to be as important in their lives as perhaps when you and I were coming up?
I think right now, with the economy being the way it is in the times that we're living in, I think it kind of created a void where minority athletes especially don't focus as much on sports because, I mean, you know, people are constantly telling them, in fact, people even told me coming up, don't focus on sports, focus on academics, focus on this, focus on that. But now it's even more, and at this point, you know, with the economy being it is and the unemployment rate among black youths and that type of thing, then they wind up focusing on the streets, and it makes a difference.
The point I'm making is that when you concentrate on athletics, you gain much more than
Oh yeah,
ability.
definitely. Because I had opportunity. Like when I was in the amateurs, I had fought for the United States team, and we traveled around the world. At first, I was going to little tournaments in Toledo. Then we started traveling. When I started training out of Detroit, we started going to different parts of the country. Then we started going to different parts of the world, and it gave me an opportunity to get a different outlook on life. My outlook wasn't just beyond at my back door or at the end of the city limits. It was like the whole world was my backyard, and I had an opportunity to see that, and I had the opportunity to take advantage of that, and that made a difference.
So Mayor, as usual, we have a few others.
Well, if you want any more questions from the champ?
Mayor, can you, we got here a little late, sir. Can we recreate the transfer of the belt and the boxing glove?
Staging.
I'm game.
The champ says he's game, so I'll do it. I want you to know the generosity of your friends that caused me to wait, Al.
Thank you, sir.
Champ, it is my pleasure on behalf of the city of Detroit to present you with this championship belt in which you was a member of a long line of great champions who've been produced by this city. Take your place on the stage. I want you to know that Detroit recognizes the contribution you've made to this city. And as mayor, it's a great pleasure for me to present you with this belt.
And I'm honored for him to present the belt to me and to represent the city of Detroit, and to represent the community at large. And like I said, after 10 long years of being a top contender and being, actually 20 years, because I started when I was 13 years old, so it's been a long time. So it's been a long time coming.
Now let him check the tape to be sure he's got it.
It's obvious these are your friends.
Good friends. Good friends.
Any further questions?
Yeah, there was one last thing. Why did you start at age 13?
Well, when I was 13, I moved into a neighborhood that was like pretty rough neighborhood, and it was, I had pretty nice stuff, had pretty nice clothes and things, so I had to protect my clothes. So I lived around the corner from the gym, and one day, they had pool and ping pong and that type of stuff, and there was a gym back in the back, and I just ventured back there one day, and actually I just never came out.
Protection.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. That's how Joe Lewis went to the
Mr. Mayor, can we ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
This one is regarding the incinerator. In fact, Roger Short is upstairs, maybe wrapping up right now, giving his version of the budget. He's wondering, I talked to him earlier today, he's wondering if the city has found a buyer or what's going on with the incinerator.
Well, when he's entitled to the information, he'll get it. And until that time, he'll have to wonder.
Is there any update?
We have nothing to report. We obviously will report it as soon as we can. It's also pretty obvious that as long as the fate of the incinerator remains in doubt, as long as it's closed down, it's not likely we're going to find any buyers.
Have you had any discussions, or did you had said you contacted the governor's office, I think he was in town the other day. Have you spoken to him personally yet, or have you been lobbying or meeting with about that to possibly get that?
We are doing everything we can, Sharon, to resolve this problem. And I've met with a number of people, but until we've done it, I don't have any comment.
Mayor, the ACLU is, as you know, going to court challenging the residency rule. Do you believe?
I heard that.
Do you believe people have a constitutional right to live where they want to live?
Yeah, but they don't have a constitutional right to take their pay off the taxpayers of the city of Detroit and pay their taxes somewhere else. They have a right to live in the city of Detroit, and we welcome them. But they don't have a right to job in the city of Detroit if they're residents somewhere else. I think that's typical of the distorted view of civil rights that ACLU has been taking over the last several years. It's not the first time that they've come up on the wrong side of an issue. It was they, I believe, who took the police department to court, challenging our right to test police officers for drugs, and therefore our right to protect the citizens of this city. Frankly, I don't understand the convoluted logic that drives ACLU. So this latest move certainly doesn't surprise me. It's consistent in its inconsistency.
What kind of fallout would you expect if you did not have a residency?
I think that there would be an accelerated move out. We would lose tax-paying employees of the city of Detroit. That more and more the people who pay taxes in this city would pay them to employees who paid taxes somewhere else, who didn't think enough of this city to live in the city and pay taxes in the city.
Mr. Mayor, one of the reports on this, I haven't seen the ACLU suit, indicated this morning that they were suing not about the residency requirement, but about the notion that you couldn't apply for a job if you lived outside the city, which would be, as I understand, a different issue since people could move in once they were hired. Is that the practice? Is that the practice in city government now?
No.
No, I don't. Maybe I'd better see the pleadings before I react to them. I'm assuming that the description I was given was correct, and that's always a mistake, unfortunately. But you know, and with the milk of human kindness coursing through my veins this morning, I took a reporter's word.
They have a press conference at 11 o'clock.
Well, then I'll wait till I hear that.
This is our shot at you.
Yeah, but you don't have to. You ought to at least tell it like it is, if you know the way it is. It is very, very possible that you didn't know. That won't stop you from reporting, but you
Well,
stop
Mr.
you
Mayor,
from
would you see
knowing.
those issues differently, though, if there was a problem in that thing?
I don't know. I don't know. One of the first things that you ask a person when they apply is, do you live in the city of Detroit? And I would give preference to a person who already lives in the city of Detroit. And I think that even that would be within the rights of the city as an employer.
Mary Ellen, Helen, I'm sorry, her last name escapes me, the parking director, proposed to council to raise the parking rates. I just wonder what your thoughts were about raising rates to get some revenue for the city, at meters and at garages.
Well, I think it's an absolutely necessary step in order to raise the funds. When you face the type of deficit that the city faces, you must make some hard decisions. You must cut services, and anything you cut is going to be painful. And you must raise revenues, and where that means increasing fees, etc., it stimulates a reaction. But there's no such thing as a free lunch. And if we're to balance this budget, we must make hard decisions. I've made mine. Now the council will consider my recommendations and hopefully make recommendations of their own or concur in the recommendations that are before them.
Are there other enterprise areas within the budget where you see fee increases coming down the line?
No, there are very few fee increases. Mainly, the savings have been achieved through attrition, through freeze, limited layoff, and through cutback in allocations in one area or another.
Any movement, Mr. Mayor, on the utility tax situation?
Well, the legislature is just back in session as of this morning. I understood that when the Court of Appeals granted us a stay, they indicated their intention to go into an accelerated consideration of the issue on its merits. What that means, I mean, that's legal lingo as far as I'm concerned. I don't know whether that means that they'll be having a hearing next week or scheduling briefs to be in, or just what it means, except that they seem to be saying that rather than go through the usual process, which could take easily a year and a half to get out of the appeals court level, they're going to speed it up.
You know, last night there was a rally over at Ford Auditorium. I was there for a while. There was a lot of support for you. There was a lot of hostility towards the media. Do you think, I'm asking you sort of two questions, do you think that this media bashing, whichever way it goes, is gotten out of hand? And what do you see as a resolution?
You know what, that's a brand new one,
No.
media bashing.
Well, last night there actually was some real hostility towards the media. I'm saying,
I wonder why.
what would you see as a resolution?
Many people in this city perceive the media, and if you were there, Sharon, you heard it. They perceive the media as being guilty of bashing this city. Now, whether that's wrong or right, that's perception. That's their perception. They said it loudly and in a number of ways. And that's what you saw. Now, if there is a dispute going on, I guess we should ask ourselves the question, is who threw the first blow? Wasn't I, it wasn't the people of the city of Detroit. I think it was the media. So to answer your question, perhaps might be an examination of your own conduct.
I guess I'm just wondering if there's a way that this can all be settled.
Well, I hope that there is. I never invited, never asked for it. It's not doing the city any good whatsoever. It's preventing me from dedicating my full energy to this city and to the problems of this city. When the media can take rumors and consistently leaks unidentified sources and handle their information as if it's a fact and proceed with a trial and conviction in the media, I don't know how you expect people to feel who love this city and perceive that to be unjust. For instance, every day I hear or read about somebody who said something about something I did or somebody I know did, but I've never heard a name. I can't fight a shadow. In the United States, under our form of government, every person has the right to face their accuser. The United States, under our form of government, every person is considered innocent to prove to be guilty. Both these cardinal principles are consistently violated by the media, whether you want to admit it or not. I've heard you report facts, so-called facts, from undisclosed sources. That doesn't give anyone a chance to face their accusers. That's what I'm talking about. We ought to cut it out, Chair. I'm willing to call it off right here and now.
Yeah.
You call it off. It's a two-way street.
At the same time, Mr. Mayor, how important was it for you to have that groundswell of support shown last night?
I think it was very important. I think it was important to show that I'm not speaking just for myself, that hundreds and thousands of people out here in the street agree with me. Want to know I didn't plan that meeting and I didn't call that meeting. And last night was the first time I attended any meeting called by that group.
Mr. Mayor, but there is the continuing problem that this is down the road going to cost us a whole lot more than it has.
There is no doubt about that, Bill. It's good, it's bad not only for the city, but for the county and for the state. I think that one thing that Owen Bieber said last night at that meeting is that we need to come together, Detroit and the suburbs. That this artificial wall that has been placed between us and being constantly built up between us is like the Berlin Wall. And it must come down. I think that was a profound statement. It is my consideration that the media is guilty of building that wall.
But the media can't be guilty of everything. Do you know what I'm saying?
And be guilty of a hell of a lot of things, Sharon.
I don't think they can be blamed for everything, though. And I feel like...
Have I talked about everything?
No, but
I talked about rumors from undisclosed sources. I've talked about the acceptance of leaks. And you say it and you print it. Leaks from the grand jury. And you know damn well that the proceedings of a grand jury, its investigation, is supposed to be secret. You blatantly report what the feds have to say on a daily basis.
A lot of times, Mr. Mayor, we have to hunt you down, and you said you're willing to drop down the guns. Would you make yourself more accessible to the media so we can...
For what? To answer a question about information you got from an undisclosed source? I've told you a long time ago that as long as there's an investigation underway, on a criminal investigation, I'm not going to answer any questions in that area. Judge Stempion issued an order to that effect. About 4, 5, 6 years ago, I think Judge DiMasso in the federal court issued a similar order of secrecy when the leaks became so volatile in the Vista and in the, what's the other one? Magnum case. So the position that I'm taking is not without legal precedent.
Incinerator decision, and that it would be an attempt to actually take control of the city away from Detroiters.
Well, there may be some who are that way. Certainly those bureaucrats who acted as spokespersons for the governor on the Pure Air, Clean Air Commission, where they closed out that $500 million incinerator and through the plans for retaining the purity of the air and the water for Wayne County, for Oakland County, and Macomb County. They certainly seem to be trying to take over. There are a whole lot of people who'd like to take over. We have right here in this room an attorney for E-Course. As you know, they've used Public Act 101 against E-Course in an attempt to take that city over. So it is not my vivid imagination at play here. We have demonstrations of this mentality on the part of certain state bureaucrats.
The other part of the thought expressed concern was that in the face of that Governor Blanchard, although he's a political ally of yours, does not stand up to that sentiment in state government to defend the city in an election year.
Well, you have to ask Governor Blanchard about that.
Did Governor Blanchard, were you ever able to talk to him directly last week?
Ask Governor Blanchard about that. I'm trying to solve a problem. I'm not here to generate an argument with Governor Blanchard.
I know that you tried to reach him, and you said you were waiting to hear back from him. Did he ever call you back?
He did call me back. Period. End of answer.
Mr. Mayor, there, particularly last night, and there were some people from last night who were displeased with the lack of contribution by both the governor and Senator England, both of whom seem to be sitting on the sidelines waiting for the right time or trying to make political way. Are they diddling while the city is about to burn?
And that might be a description of what they are doing or not doing.
Are you planning to return to Lansing anytime in the next few
I
years?
have no immediate plans.
What's the outlook in the Senate when they reach?
We'll know better as of today. As you know, the legislature, both Senate and House, come back into session today after an Easter recess. The bill is exactly where it was. It's passed the House. It's in the Finance Committee in the Senate.
Mr. Mayor, you said that the redirecting of NOF funds to home demolition would probably be the most controversial part of the proposed budget. Does the letter you sent to the council today make it less controversial?
I hope so. We attempted to recommend certain essential NOFs, at the same time retain the emphasis, the major emphasis, on demolition, which I believe is the most basic contribution we can make to conditions in the community.
Still a significant cut. Do you think that
There's cuts all over. And as I said, I can only say, when you face a deficit and you try and balance a budget, somebody has got to be cut. And nobody likes to be cut. So that means you're going to have, whoever got cut's going to be yelling.
Mr. Mayor, the NOF money is probably the most politically sensitive appropriation in the entire budget.
I understand that, Bill, but I also believe that demolition is politically sensitive. You know that in the past year, citizens across the city have taken the law into their own hands and have endangered their own safety and health by tearing down buildings on their own. They created a health hazard and a fire hazard. And I think that we have to step up to the demands of the citizens and continue with an accelerated program of demolition. I said in my message to the City Council that if we can continue the pace that we've set up this past year, the current year, which is twice the pace we've ever had in the past, we can continue at this pace. Next year and the year after, we will have caught up to the problem of demolition. It will disappear as we now know it. And I think that we're close enough to pull out all stops in an effort to do just that. And that's what this budget does.
Do you have any plans to request new legislation to make absentee landlords more responsible for the upkeep?
Yes. That would primarily be in Lansing, but we're working on several bits of legislation. For instance, the problem with Hudson's, I think, is a classic situation where Hudson's sold the building to a purchaser who said he wanted to redo the building, renovate the building, and use it for other purposes. But all we could see was scrap dealers moving in and out of the building and stuff being torn down, nothing being built in. That's been a practice for too long in this city. Milk a property for all that it's worth, then abandon it, walk away from it, allow it to be stripped, and then it becomes an eyesore. And it acts as a canker. It affects and infects all the property around it.
So you're requesting legislation in Lansing?
Yes. Yeah, there's several bits of legislation we're requesting. Another, of course, has to do with toxic waste. Very often, owners of property will desert that property, walk away from it, and leave it loaded with toxic waste. We discovered that when we went out to the location for Chrysler. We discovered that at the location for Porterfield Wilson. We discovered that at Carter Electric. There are many locations around the city that are just loaded with toxic remnants. The responsibility for cleaning that up should apply to the last owner, not to the city. And we need to change the legislation.
Do you know where the legislation stands now?
But the toxic waste legislation is in the form of being written. The other two have been introduced.
Mr. Mayor, concerning the comments Jack Kemp made about Tom Lewis and the situation in public housing in Detroit here, do you see that controversy generating some changes in the housing department here in the city? Do you have any plans to?
No. First of all, I don't think that Jack Kemp, and I answered this last night, is in any position to accuse anybody of being inconsiderate of the poor at the rate with which the federal government has been cutting back on the subsidy, not only to housing, public housing, but to other forms of housing, to social services, to education, across the board. They're cutting back. And he has the nerve to come here on a political mission. He didn't come here because of any concern with the poor. He came here to raise money for his political friends. Councilman Butler, John Engler, and the Republican Party. So to take time out from his partisan activities to engage in a partisan political attack, it seems to me, is hardly worthy of my reply. And I'm certainly not going to be guided in any relationship I have with any of my appointees by Jack Kemp's observations.
Do you think, though, some of his ideas have any merit, the tenant ownership?
Well, I'm willing to look at them, but I think that tenant ownership basically is an attempt by the federal government to get out from under and to dump subsidy and responsibility for that housing on the backs of the poor. The reason, he cites the fact that we have so many abandoned units in the city of Detroit. The reason for that is consistently over the last 15 years, the federal government has cut back on the amount of money that they have allocated on an annual basis to maintain the property. You have to invest a certain amount of money in the property to keep it up. Now, I'd like to know where he expects these poor people to get this money to keep this property up. They don't have a spinning wheel like Rumpelstiltskin and spin gold out of straw.
Mayor Young, one last question on the parking rates. Don't you feel that that will stifle the efforts to bring people back up?
Everything has to be weighed. And every positive has a negative. We weighed both positive and negative, and we felt that the positive prevailed.
Of course, Mr. Mayor, you also considered that the rate of city garages and lots is lower than all the private ones.
Oh, even with the raise, it will be infinitesimally raised in comparison with the charges made by what I call the surface parking lot bandits.
Yeah, but maybe it's about time for some law to do something about those parking bandits, because at some lots now they're charging $1 for every 20 minutes, and they're just gouging people.
Well, I think that that's free enterprise. That's one of the reasons we try and build as many public facilities as we can and charge a relatively reasonable rate.
Well, maybe it's free enterprise, but it's also shaft, and it frequently hits the people who are least able.
Free enterprise is a shaft more often than it's not. That's a definition. That's another definition of free enterprise, Bill. Shaft them before they shaft you.
Mayor, if I'm reading the budget amendment statement correct, you're going to be funding the CDC recipients at about half again as high a level as the NOF recipients. What's the reason for that basic choice?
The what?
The CDC groups will receive about $1.8 million compared to $1.2 million going to the NOF recipients.
No, the CDC, and you were speaking of the supplementary letter I sent, that's in addition to what was already in there. There was nothing in there at all for NOF. There already had been an allocation for CDC. We'd never intended to cut CDC. There was a miscalculation. And we seek to restore whatever the amount of that miscalculation was.
But in terms of the original priority, why would the CDC groups be more important to fund than the NOF recipients?
Well, the CDC in the first place are established by state law. And in the second place, they're elected. They're the oldest form of community organization that we see, and they are, since they are elected and established by state law, they are regulated and controlled in a way that neighborhood groups are not. If there are no other questions, thank you.
Thank you.